this. So I've realized something very interesting recently. I've noticed an irony. I think I've mentioned it before, but it became very clear to me recently. And that is that one of the litmus tests of whether you have done work on yourself as an individual is how open you are to admit that you're not perfect. People who have done very little work at themselves, and there's no judgment in that statement, maybe because they're too damaged, maybe because they're in denial, whatever, they get defensive the second you tell them that they have something to work on. Somebody who's worked on themselves, in other words, acknowledged that they're imperfect, then when you tell them they're imperfect or that they have things to work on, they accept it, they embrace it, and they even thank you. And what helped me notice it is that each and every one of us in our life needs someone to sometimes tell us the truth, to tell it to us in our face the way it is. We need it. But most of us never allow someone to say it to us. Recently, I've had experiences with various people that life had broken them enough that they were finally able to hear the truth. Now, it's not because I'm a wise person or that I can say something. I don't think I'm wise and I don't think I can solve my own problems. But as an outsider, I see things. Just like as an outsider, you see things about me. That's the way Hashem created the world. In the Talmud, it says a convict, a prisoner, cannot release themselves from prison. You can't break out of prison. You need somebody else to break you out, or at least help you open the door, etc. So too in life, our own blind spots are our own blind spots. You need someone to tell them to you, and we all have blind spots. And sometimes all it takes to get your life in order is someone to be able to look at you and tell you your blind spots. But until you're not willing to listen, you will be blind that you even have blind spots. You'll be in total denial. And recently, I've had the opportunity of a few people who came open enough and said, okay, Rabbi, what's the issue? And I was able to point them and say, this is the issue. Again, not because I'm clever or not, but I'm an outsider. But until they were willing to listen, I can't say. The Lubavitcher Rebbe used to say, when people asked, the one time somebody asked him, why didn't you tell me to do this? He went into a business deal which flopped. The Rebbe said, I was taught by my father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, you never offer advice unless you're asked. And there's a lot of wisdom in that statement, not because you're being selfish, only if you ask me, I'll give you wisdom. No. You'll only give advice. It's only worth giving advice if someone wants the advice. Otherwise, it's going on deaf ears and it's actually turning them away. Until a person's not willing to hear another person's perspective on their life, you're wasting your time giving them advice. Most of us have the people around us. We are surrounded by the people that, were we open to listen to their advice, we would have figured out our issues long ago. Our siblings, our spouse, our friends. Sometimes our friends will tell us things about our spouse, or our spouse will tell us something about friends. There was always someone there, unless you're really living alone in a cave or on an island. There was always someone there who could have advised you against making those foolish mistakes. There usually was somebody who knew that what you're doing is going to end up disastrous, but you weren't willing to listen. I wasn't willing to listen to that person. So the issue rarely is that there aren't good advisors out there. The issue usually is I'm not ready to listen to anybody. I don't want someone to tell me that that guy is bad for me. I don't want someone to tell me that my anger is what's pushing my kids away. I don't want someone to tell me that living in this environment is toxic and I have to step out. I don't want somebody to tell me that immigration is not going to solve my problems. or that immigration will solve the problem in the specific case. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I don't want people to tell me that. So because I don't want to hear it, I don't allow people to say it. And even if they say it, I block it. Bam, I walk straight into a wall. Because again, I cannot see the full picture. God created us in a way that we can't see the full picture. Otherwise, we would never be able to live in our life. I want to explain something. If you have an objective view of yourself, then you're not living inside yourself. The reason we cannot see all the issues of our own life is because part of the beauty of life is being subjective, getting fully involved, engrossed, emotionally involved. If you were always able to stand outside yourself, then you're not living your life. The reason I can see things in other people's lives, but I cannot necessarily see things in my life, I could see your blind spots, but not necessarily my own, is because it's by design. I have to live my life and I have to get fully engrossed. At the same time, I need advice and guidance from outside people to sit there saying, okay, Levi, that's your blind spot. Don't go there. I know you think that this part of your life is okay, but as a friend, I can tell you objectively, that's not balanced. Now, I might turn red in the face and say, gosh, that hurts, that's sore. But if I'm ready to hear it, I'll grow exponentially because I just got incredible advice. I just got incredible guidance. I was just given a new mirror on a blind spot. I can now see my car fully. I don't have any blind spots, or at least that blind spot is gone. And yet it's the people who are open to this. It's only people who are already on a growth journey that can grow more by being open to this. But it's the people who are defensive, insecure, who never allow anyone to open them up to a blind spot, that they just get darker and darker and darker into the cave because the blind spot just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The more you're open to, I want to say it like this. Insecure people often come across as standoffish. Insecure people often come across as egocentric. They seem like, oh, don't approach me, I seem to have it all together. But the irony is that they're thinking they have it all together, but they're actually fully insecure and they have nothing together because they'll never grow and actually get it together because they're not open to criticism. And it's the person who is willing to acknowledge I'm not perfect and not get offended by that, that one day can become much more, not perfect, but much closer. In other words, acknowledging that you're not perfect is not a weakness, it's a strength. And thinking that you're perfect is not a strength, it's a weakness. Saying I am perfect and therefore I'm not willing to hear what you have to say because if you're attacking me, that means you're making me less perfect. That is the ultimate declaration of weakness. But coming and saying, of course I'm not perfect. I was never asked to be perfect and I'm human. Nobody created me perfect. And I'm not threatened by you telling me. Either I'll take it, accept it, and adapt it, or I won't. But I'm not threatened by you telling me I'm not perfect. I know that. And I'm secure in that. I'm not threatened. I'm not saying I, lady. I'm saying the person. I'm not threatened by it. On the contrary, I know I'm imperfect. I know I have blind spots. Please help me. Versus, I'm perfect. Don't you tell me I'm not perfect. I can't handle it. I can't handle it emotionally. And I'm going to fight you. Each time you tell me that I'm the problem, I'm going to attack you. No, you're the problem. Why? What's so hard to accept you're the problem? Why does that destroy your self-esteem? Why is our self-esteem based on the fact that we're perfect? That is not self-esteem, that's self-delusion. Convincing yourself that you're worthy of respect or you're worthy of love because you're perfect is ridiculous. And that itself is the greatest imperfection. But rather believing I'm imperfect and I'm still worthy of love. And I will never be perfect, but I want to perfect myself a little more. Please help me. I'm open to your criticism as long as it's said with love, not condescending, not with judgment. I want to hear what you have to say because I know I have blind spots. It's the way I was manufactured. It's not my problem. God designed me in the way I have blind spots. Please help me. I want to know my blind spots. Please help me get better at what I do. How else will I? I don't know it. All I do is live with myself. I don't know how I come across to other people. Help me. Until you're not open to hear constructive criticism, you are not even on the ladder of growth. You're not growing anywhere. You think you're growing, but you're growing within a delusion because who says that's where you should be growing? Until you're getting feedback of somebody saying, okay, boy, that part, you really need to work on it. You might be working on the part that's most convenient for you, but ultimately that's not your journey. Give you an example. Somebody might think that their issue is eating. Fine, so I'll go on a diet. But usually eating is a symptom of something else. Anxiety, impulsivity, insecurity. So, no, I'm fine. I'm just eating because I love food. Well, as somebody who loves food, I'll tell you this. If you're eating too much, there's something not okay. And it's nothing to do with food. Food is an expression of a pain. Deal with it. No, I'm fine. Just the food. If only I went on a diet and I lost 20 kilo, I'll be perfect. No, you won't. Anxiety doesn't get smaller if your tummy gets smaller. And insecurity doesn't get diminished if your body mass gets diminished. It doesn't work that way. But often we sit there saying, no, that's it. Okay, what's the simplistic answer? What's the simplistic answer? Oh, if only I get divorced and I marry a different person, oh, that my issues will go. No, your issues will go with you in the next relationship. How many marriages have I heard have actually dissolved dafka after people emigrate? I've heard so many stories of people emigrating and then getting divorced. At one stage, did they actually think that moving to Australia or to London would solve their marriage? How in the world do you think so? Unless there's a specific thing in South Africa that's destroying your marriage, a parent that's overbearing, unless that's happening, why in the world did you think that your issues are not going with you? Of course, the same Yetzer Hara, the same evil inclination, the same insecurity, the same imperfections, the same denial that you lived in Joburg, you're going to have in Melbourne. What did you think? I believe the single biggest destruction of marriages, the single biggest, is people, either he or she or both, unable to admit I'm imperfect and I need to work. There's always one of them saying, no, it's not me. I'm not the problem. Or I am the problem, but too bad on you. You're going to be stuck with it. Acknowledge there's an issue and feel empowered to deal with it. It's so simple, but it's so hard because in order to acknowledge there's an issue, it means that your self-esteem has to come from a place that doesn't say I'm perfect. Your self-esteem has to come from a place that says I'm lovable even though I'm imperfect, because that's what all humans are. Lovable, imperfect people. When people hold their baby and say, gosh, she's perfect. No, she's not. Right now, she might be perfect, pretty much, she's not keeping you up all night, she's not colicky, fine. But she's not going to be perfect. You didn't bring imperfection. And believe me, you don't want to raise a perfect person. That's like raising a robot. They're imperfect. And our job is just to love them and make them believe that they can become a little better if they're open. If they're open. It just boggles the mind how closed people are to growth until life punches them in the nose. Until they suffer it, and please God, they never do, but when they suffer an incredible tragedy or a mental breakdown or a freak episode, it's only then that they open up and sit there saying, gosh, I really, really need to open myself up, like something's not working. But until then, all the signals are there. People are like, no, you got to do something. No, I'm fine. Straight into the delusion, straight into the pit. And I'll say this as a rabbi. Often people will, go through a tragedy, and then the rabbi has to show up and spend an hour or two at home, not has to, chooses to. And people will say, Rabbi, I should have spoken to you sooner. And I always say the same thing. No, you couldn't have. If I called you a week ago and said, I want to spend an hour with you, you would say, sorry, Rabbi, what's that all about? And even if we did speak about an hour, we would talk about the weather. It's suddenly that life punched you in the face, that suddenly you're like, okay, let's talk about faith. Let's talk about meaning. Let's talk about why I'm here. Let's talk about what my guilt. And it's not just a rabbi, it's a therapist. It's any person that we reach out to. We only reach out when we're already in the pit. But that's not the genius. There's no chachma, there's no wisdom in reaching out when you fell in. Reach out while you're walking down the road to make sure you don't fall into the pit in the first place. It doesn't have to be a rabbi, but just somebody outside yourself. Somebody who you can listen to and accept the truth. You do not know all your blind spots. It's impossible. Unless someone told it to you, it's impossible. Accept that. It's by design that you need people in your life. It's by design that you get married. It's by design that you have children. It's by design that you have siblings. All of them, part of their function in your life is to point out your blind spots, sometimes very meanly, sometimes it's not pretty, but it's necessary if you want to grow as a person. Stop resisting it so much. Stop resisting people helping you on your road, even if their intentions aren't good. Sometimes your biggest enemies could be your biggest help because they could point out, maybe they're magnifying it, but they could point out your weakness. And maybe it's not as big as they think it is because, they hate you, so therefore they're magnifying you, but there's something there. Listen. And be comfortable being imperfect. But at the same time, don't accept that as enough. We have to do better. Not because our self-esteem is dependent on it, but because that's what's the call of the hour. That's what we're here to do. We're here to grow. So as long as you think you're perfect, you will stay as imperfect as ever. The moment you're willing to accept I'm imperfect and I want to grow is when you'll actually start climbing the ladder. Often we tell people, your parents are idiots. They don't know, what's good for you. And sometimes parents are projecting. Or don't listen to this person, don't listen to that person. But very often the people close to you, if they've been saying the same thing for 20 years, chances are they're right. You're too anxious. You're too narcissistic. You're too paranoid. You're too defensive. If you've been hearing that a lot, it's true. It's true. Might not be pretty to accept. I remember my friends always used to say, Levi, you're so defensive. He said, no, I'm not defensive. People are hurting me. Levi, you're defensive, you're defensive, defensive, you're defensive. I heard it a million times. I used to get so angry until I accepted it. Of course I was defensive. I was insecure, so I was defensive. If one person says something, maybe they're misreading you. If a few people who know you well are telling you, honey, you're not okay. I'm telling you, I've seen you the last 2 weeks, you're not okay. Please don't tell them you're okay. No one's buying it. And the more you claim you're okay is when you're totally in denial. I have these people in my life, whatever, people, family, friends, community members, that it's so obvious they're not okay, but you say, listen, how are you? I'm fine. Okay, now if I'm just meeting you at the mall and I'm asking you, then that's the right answer. But I'm not calling you to ask you and to hear the cliche. We're not at the mall and I don't mind talking. Please don't say you're fine. Unless you don't want to talk to me, so find someone else to talk to. I'm fine. No, you're not. Embrace it. Say, I'm struggling, I'm in pain, help. Maybe the other person can't help, but the truth is the Talmud says that even by talking it out with somebody else, it's such a relief. Today we came up with the idea of therapy, and yes, many people need therapists for many reasons, but one of the main reasons we pay people is because we just want to pay someone to listen to us for an hour. Just listen. We need to get feedback. We need to have people help us grow. It is necessary for the human condition, especially now, and that's what I'm going to finish with, especially now during COVID, after 16 months, we are all struggling emotionally, whether you admit it or not. We've been pushed. Life has pushed us in a very strange way, and the ramifications are only beginning to be seen. So chances are if somebody says, honey, you're not you, don't tell them baloney. If they're saying it, it's true. If more than one person's saying it. And ask yourself, first of all, why does it hurt so much to acknowledge it? I know it. Deep down, I know it. And second of all, what could I do to get better? Stop denying your faults, because denying your faults is actually the biggest fault of all. Denying your faults is the biggest fault. Claiming that you're perfect is a declaration of absolute imperfection. L'chaim.